Echoes call from hollow halls, a voice that creeps and softly crawls. Time stands still, the air is.
It was a quiet Wednesday morning in the Bronx when chaos suddenly erupted. The streets, usually filled with the hum of early commuters, became the scene of a cold-blooded assassination attempt that looked like something straight out of a mob movie. The clock had barely touched 6:30 when the sound of gunfire tore through the neighborhood, shattering the early calm and sending pedestrians scrambling for cover. According to the New York Police Department, the target of this shocking attack was 41-year-old Salvatore Zottola, a man with deep ties to one of New York's most notorious organized crime families. Salvatore wasn't just any resident of the Bronx. He was the son of a Bonanno crime family associate, a lineage that carried a legacy of power, secrets, and danger. Moments before the bullets flew, security cameras along the street had already begun recording what would later become one of the most talked about crime videos in recent years. The footage shows Salvatore sitting in his car, seemingly unaware of the danger lurking nearby. Then, in a chilling instant, a dark-colored Nissan pulls up close behind him. The suspect steps out, gun in hand, and begins firing multiple rounds at the unsuspecting man. The sound of the shots echoed through the Bronx streets as Salvatore's desperate instincts kicked in. He flung open his car door and tried to run, stumbling and ducking behind vehicles in an attempt to escape. But the shooter was relentless, following and continuing to fire as Salvatore fought for his life. Witnesses later said the scene was so sudden and violent that it left everyone frozen in disbelief. The surveillance footage, now in the hands of police, paints a harrowing picture of what was clearly a planned hit. It was not a random act of violence or a robbery gone wrong. It was personal. It was precise. And it bore all the marks of a mob-style attack, the kind that once dominated the criminal landscape of New York decades ago. When emergency responders arrived, they found Salvatore bleeding but conscious. Against all odds, he had survived the ambush. He was rushed to a nearby hospital where doctors worked frantically to stabilize him. News of the shooting spread like wildfire, stirring whispers and speculation across the city's underworld. Many couldn't help but wonder who wanted Salvatore dead, and why now. Police investigators quickly began piecing together what had happened. The surveillance footage provided a crucial lead. The shooter's vehicle was a dark-colored Nissan, possibly an Altima or Maxima. Detectives combed through hours of street and traffic camera footage, hoping to trace the car's path before and after the attack. But despite the clarity of the video, the suspect's face remained hidden, covered by a hood and partially shielded by the car's tinted windows. The NYPD later released the video to the public, hoping someone might recognize the gunman or the vehicle. The footage, shocking in its rawness, made national headlines. Onlookers watched as the man fired repeatedly at close range, then calmly retreated to his car before speeding away. The audacity of the attack, carried out in broad daylight on a public street, stunned both law enforcement and residents. Meanwhile, detectives tried to question Salvatore in the hospital, but they quickly hit a wall. Despite surviving an attempt on his life, he refused to cooperate with investigators. To the frustration of the NYPD, he offered no names, no motives, and no insight into who might be after him. For seasoned officers familiar with organized crime culture, this silence was telling. Loyalty runs deep in those circles, and the code of silence omerta is often stronger than fear itself. Still, the police continued their work. Forensic teams analyzed bullet casings, car fragments, and any other evidence left behind at the scene. Crime scene investigators scoured the area for witnesses or additional surveillance cameras. Every detail mattered, but as days passed, progress was slow, and the shooter remained at large. Reporters swarmed the Bronx neighborhood, speaking with locals who described the terror of that morning. One resident said they heard what sounded like firecrackers, only to realize moments later that someone was being shot at. Others said they saw a man running before collapsing, clutching his side. The community, shaken and uneasy, wondered whether this was an isolated incident or part of a deeper criminal feud. What made the attack even more chilling was Salvatore's family history. The Zottolas were no strangers to violence. Years earlier, Salvatore's father, Sylvester Zottola, had survived multiple attempts on his life before he was ultimately shot and killed outside a McDonald's drive-thru in the Bronx. Investigators had linked those attacks to organized crime disputes involving extortion and control over illegal gambling operations. Now it seemed history was repeating itself. Another Zodala, another ambush, another unanswered question. In the days following the shooting, online forums and social media buzzed with speculation. Some claimed the hit was part of an internal power struggle within the Bonanno family. Others believed rival groups were sending a message. Law enforcement sources refused to confirm any of these theories, but they didn't dismiss them either. The pattern was too familiar, the method too deliberate. Meanwhile, the video continued circulating across news networks, offering the public a rare glimpse into the ruthless world of organized crime. Viewers were horrified by how calm and calculated the shooter appeared, moving with precision and escaping without hesitation. It was the kind of footage that left a lasting impression, a reminder that the shadows of the mob still linger in parts of New York. As for Salvatore, his refusal to cooperate effectively stalled the investigation. Detectives couldn't compel him to talk, and without his help, tracing the motives behind the attack became significantly harder. Yet, in the world he came from, silence wasn't just defiance, it was survival. Talking meant betrayal, and betrayal could mean death. Weeks later, the NYPD renewed their plea for public assistance, urging anyone with information to come forward. They emphasized that even the smallest detail, a license plate, a street camera sighting, or a tip about the shooter's whereabouts could make a difference. But as time passed, leads grew colder. The attempted assassination of Salvatore Zottola remains one of the most chilling reminders of how deeply rooted organized crime still is in certain corners of America. It was a crime captured on camera in stark clarity, a near-fatal encounter between loyalty, vengeance, and the brutal code of silence that defines mob life. On that quiet morning in the Bronx, the streets witnessed more than gunfire. They witnessed a continuation of an old story, one of family ties, betrayal, and blood. The footage stands as both evidence and warning. In the world of organized crime, survival often comes at the price of silence, and no one, no matter how connected, is ever truly safe. Before we go any further, I just want to ask you for a small favor. If you're enjoying the video so far, please give it a like. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. We recently hit 100,000 subscribers, and that's all thanks to you. Our 100K special surprise was revealed, and we had many positive responses from you. Our next goal is to hit 200K before the year ends. It feels impossible, but hey, it's free to dream, right? Also, there's a hidden word somewhere in this video for you. Let's see if you can find it. Now, back to the video. It was the early morning of April 12, 2021, when a routine traffic stop on a Georgia highway spiraled into one of the most violent police pursuits in recent memory. The sun had barely risen over Carroll County west of Atlanta, when a Georgia State Patrol trooper noticed a silver Nissan Sentra tearing down the interstate at speeds well over 100 miles per hour. The trooper switched on his sirens and lights, signaling for the driver to pull over. What began as a speeding violation would soon explode into a full-scale gun battle that left one suspect dead, 3 officers injured, and another man facing a lifetime behind bars. Investigators later identified the driver as Aaron Shelton, with his cousin Pierre Shelton sitting in the passenger seat. Both men, cousins from Alabama, had no intention of stopping. The dash camera footage from the trooper's vehicle captured the tense moment the Nissan briefly pulled to the side of the road, as though to comply, before suddenly accelerating again. The sharp roar of the engine drowned out the siren as the car sped off, beginning a dangerous, high-speed chase across Carroll County. The trooper, determined not to let them escape, followed closely behind. His dash camera recorded every heart-stopping second. The Nissan weaving through lanes, the flashing blue lights in pursuit, and the radio chatter between officers coordinating the chase. Soon, the trooper gained on the fleeing vehicle. Using a maneuver designed to end pursuit safely, he tapped the rear bumper of the Nissan in an attempt to spin it out. The car swerved violently, but managed to straighten itself before continuing down the highway. Then, the situation took a deadly turn. From the passenger side window, Pierre Shelton suddenly leaned out, raising an AK-47 rifle. Without hesitation, he opened fire on the pursuing trooper. Bullets tore through the air, shattering the calm morning with rapid cracks. The trooper shouted into his radio, shots fired," as he ducked behind the wheel, trying to maintain control of his car while under heavy gunfire. The dash camera captured the muzzle flashes bursting from the passenger window, a sight that sent shockwaves through the law enforcement community when it was later released. Other officers quickly joined the pursuit. County deputies, local police, and additional troopers responded to the emergency call, forming a convoy of flashing lights chasing the armed suspects across multiple highways. The chase became a coordinated effort, with officers communicating through dispatch and planning tactical stops. Sergeant Rob Holloway of the Carrollton Police Department could be heard on his body camera, giving orders calmly but firmly. "Back it off just a little," he instructed. "We're going to follow at this distance. Get Villarica set up with spike strips at Bay Springs." Despite their efforts to contain the chase, the suspects continued firing at the pursuing officers. Sergeant Holloway remained cautious, his voice steady even as his vehicle pushed close to 90 miles per hour. Then, suddenly, gunfire erupted again. The suspects hit their brakes abruptly, a maneuver that forced Holloway closer. Within seconds, bullets ripped through the air, one of them striking Holloway directly in the head. His vehicle veered out of control and crashed violently. Dash camera footage from multiple patrol cars showed the horrifying moment his car drifted off the road and slammed into an embankment. Radio chatter filled the airwaves. 229. "Somebody check on 229. An officer's voice called out desperately, referring to Holloway's unit number. Other officers arrived within seconds, jumping out of their vehicles and taking cover behind squad cars as more gunfire erupted. The chaos on the scene was overwhelming. Flashing lights, shattered glass, and the sound of rifles echoing through the early morning air. At another point in the pursuit, Carrollton police officer Chase Gordy joined the chase and took up position near the intersection of Bankhead Highway and Old Airport Road. His dash and body cameras later provided a hauntingly close view of what happened next. Gordy took cover behind his squad car, using it as a shield while returning fire. The gunshots came closer, ricocheting off metal and pavement, in one chilling moment captured on his body camera. Gordy can be heard calling for help as the gunfire intensified. "He's on my car. He's behind my car," he shouted, his voice strained with urgency. Then, just as he ducked for cover, the suspect appeared. Pierre Shelton, still armed with a rifle, charging toward the squad car. He fired multiple rounds, striking Gordy and another deputy, Jay Repetto, who had also responded to the scene. Within seconds, Gordy collapsed behind his vehicle, seriously wounded. The body camera footage showed his hand reaching out for his radio, calling for backup as the gunfire continued around him. The shootout raged for several minutes, a chaotic symphony of sirens, gunfire, and shouted commands. Officers on the scene returned fire as they tried to contain the suspects. Eventually, Pierre Shelton was shot and killed during the exchange. His cousin Aaron Shelton, the driver, was captured shortly afterward, surrounded by armed officers who ordered him to surrender. The sight of the destroyed patrol cars, bullet-riddled vehicles, and wounded officers painted a grim picture of the morning's events. Sergeant Rob Holloway, though gravely injured, miraculously survived after undergoing extensive medical treatment. Officer Chase Gordy and Deputy Jay Repetto also sustained serious injuries, but lived to tell their stories. Their bravery under fire would later be commended across the state. The incident, however, left a lasting scar on the Carroll County community and law enforcement agencies throughout Georgia. As the dust settled, investigators pieced together the events of that deadly morning. What started as a simple speeding violation had escalated into a rolling gun battle spanning miles of highway and city streets. In total, 3 officers were shot, and 1 suspect was dead. The surviving suspect, Aaron Shelton, faced a long list of charges, 22 counts including felony murder, aggravated assault on law enforcement officers, and felony fleeing. Prosecutors pursued the case aggressively, determined to seek justice for the wounded officers and the trauma inflicted on their department. Months later, in court, the evidence against Aaron Shelton was overwhelming. The dash and body camera videos told the story clearly. The reckless speeding, the deliberate gunfire, and the disregard for human life. Witnesses described the chaos of that morning, and forensic experts detailed how close several officers came to dying. In the end, the jury found Aaron Shelton guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For the officers who survived, the memories of that day remain vivid. The sounds of gunfire, the radio calls, and the sight of their fellow officers bleeding on the pavement are images that will never fade. Yet, amid the tragedy, there was also resilience, a testament to the courage and unity of those who risked their lives to protect others. What happened in Carroll County on April 12, 2021, stands as a powerful reminder of how quickly routine moments can turn deadly in the line of duty. It's a story of chaos and courage, of two cousins who made a fatal choice, and of officers who faced unimaginable danger but never backed down. It was a quiet night on January 22nd, 2023, inside an apartment gym in Tampa, Florida. The clock neared 10 o'clock, and the room was mostly empty. Just the hum of the air conditioning and the rhythmic sound of weights clinking together as 24-year-old Nishali Alma completed her evening workout. It was a routine she often followed to unwind after a long day. The gym was familiar, safe, or so she thought. But that night, everything changed. As Nishali exercised, she noticed a man at the glass door. She recognized him immediately. She had seen him before, someone who lived in the same apartment complex. Without thinking much of it, she approached and opened the door. Her first thought was simple: he must want to work out, just like her. There was nothing unusual about that. But as soon as he stepped inside, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Within seconds, what started as a normal gym session turned into a terrifying fight for survival. The man, later identified by police as Xavier Thomas Jones, 25 years old, began approaching Nishali. At first she thought he might be trying to say something, but his silence was chilling. He didn't speak a word. Instead, he walked straight toward her, his expression unreadable, his movements deliberate. Confused, she pushed him and demanded, "What are you doing? Get away from me." But he didn't stop. Before she could react further, Xavier lunged at her. The gym security camera captured the horrifying moment as he grabbed her, forcing her backward near the weight racks. Nishali tried to pull away, shouting for him to stop, but he was relentless. The two struggled violently, moving across the gym floor as she tried to fight him off. At one point, she managed to run a few steps toward the exit, but he chased her down, dragging her to the floor again. "I knew I could fight back," she later said in an interview.
In my mind, I knew I was stronger than him, and I knew I could fight back.
Pinned to the ground, her heart pounded as adrenaline surged through her body. She refused to give in. With every ounce of strength she had, she fought back, kicking, punching, and clawing at her attacker. Using her phone, she struck him in the face, aiming for his nose and eyes, anywhere that might hurt enough to make him stop. He tightened his grip, but Nishali didn't give up. She kept fighting, screaming and swinging, all while trying to reach her phone to dial 911. It was a desperate struggle between strength and survival. Then, something changed. Perhaps realizing that she wasn't going to stop, that she was determined to fight until her last breath, the attacker began to lose control. He loosened his grip, and for a brief moment, Nishali saw her chance. She threw another punch, scrambled to her feet, and sprinted toward the gym door. The surveillance footage showed her running barefoot across the apartment complex hallway, escaping to a nearby unit where she pounded on the door, pleading for help. The residents let her in and called the police. She was trembling but alive, and she had just survived a nightmare. Later, when asked what kept her going, Nishali said, "If I keep fighting, he's going to stop." And she was right. Law enforcement arrived soon after. The Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office reviewed the gym's surveillance footage, which clearly showed the assault. Within 24 hours, officers tracked down Xavier Thomas Jones and arrested him. He was charged with kidnapping, sexual battery, and false imprisonment. When the news broke, the footage spread quickly online. People were stunned by Nishali's bravery and the raw footage of her standing up to her attacker. Experts later said that her quick thinking under pressure, her refusal to panic, likely saved her life. "She didn't fall into the trap," said one safety instructor who reviewed the video. "She reacted, she fought, and she used every opportunity to create distance." For Nishali, the trauma was real, but so was her determination to use the experience to help others. Speaking publicly after the incident, she encouraged women never to feel powerless in the face of danger. "They don't have to feel like this," she said. "They don't have to go through something like this. Be aware of your surroundings and be ready to act." Her story quickly became an example of courage and survival. Safety experts used her experience to teach valuable lessons about self-defense. They demonstrated techniques similar to what Nishali had done instinctively: striking the nose, hitting soft tissue, and using nearby objects like a phone or keys as defensive tools. If you strike someone in the nose or eyes, it hurts no matter how strong they are. One expert explained, "That's your chance to escape." As the case moved through court, more details emerged. Thomas Jones, held without bond, pleaded not guilty to all charges. His lawyer offered no comment when contacted by reporters. But for Nishali, the outcome of the trial wasn't the only thing that mattered. She had already won the most important battle, survival. Reflecting on that night, she admitted that she had been caught off guard. The idea that danger could appear in such an ordinary place, a gym she used almost every day, was hard to process. But she also wanted people to understand that awareness can make all the difference. It starts with being alert, she said. You never know when something like this can happen. Her bravery drew national attention. Police praised her for staying calm and strong despite being attacked. Her quick reaction and courage were critical, said the Hillsborough County Sheriff's spokesperson. She refused to be a victim, and that mindset helped save her life. Nishali later shared advice that resonated with thousands of viewers. Never give up. As long as you keep fighting, if you show him you are strong, that you're not giving up, you can survive. Her words became a message of hope for countless women who had faced or feared similar situations. The video of the attack, though difficult to watch, served a powerful purpose. It showed not just an act of violence, but also a moment of human strength and resilience. Many viewers described feeling inspired by her determination. Some even reached out to local gyms asking about safety measures and self-defense classes. In the end, what happened on that January night wasn't just a story of terror, it was a story of triumph. Alone in that gym, surrounded by silence and fear, Nishali refused to surrender. Her courage turned what could have been a tragedy into a testimony of survival and self-empowerment. Her fight, captured on camera, is now more than evidence in a courtroom. It's a reminder to everyone, especially women, that even in moments of darkness, strength can rise from within. And for Nishali Alma, that night in the gym proved one unshakable truth. She was not just a victim, she was a survivor who refused to be broken. On a seemingly calm morning in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, what began as a quiet moment over coffee soon spiraled into chaos and gunfire. The date was January 22nd, and the clock had just struck 10:44 when customers inside a small cafe suddenly found themselves caught in the middle of a real-life action scene. The tranquil rhythm of the morning was abruptly shattered when a young man, appearing nervous yet determined, pushed open the cafe door and announced a robbery. The hum of casual conversation immediately fell silent. A few startled customers froze in their seats, while others instinctively ducked or backed away. Among them was a man in a yellow cap, sitting at a table with his wife. To everyone else, he looked like an ordinary customer enjoying a mid-morning break. But unknown to the would-be robber, this man was an off-duty civil police officer, someone trained to remain calm under pressure and think with precision when danger arose. From his seat, the officer quietly observed the intruder's every move. The robber's voice trembled slightly as he barked orders, waving a gun in one hand while gesturing toward the cashier. The tension in the air was almost tangible. The officer's wife noticed the subtle shift in her husband's demeanor, the way his body straightened, his eyes sharpened, and his hand instinctively drifted toward his waist where his service weapon rested. Without saying a word, she too maintained her composure, acting as if nothing was wrong, doing her best not to draw suspicion. The security camera above captured every detail: the robber pacing toward the counter, the officer's discreet movements, and the silent exchange of glances between husband and wife. The officer waited patiently, calculating the right moment to act. He knew any sudden movement could put everyone's lives at risk. The criminal, growing more agitated, demanded money from the cashier, unaware that his time was running out. Then came the moment of truth. As the robber turned slightly, distracted by a nervous customer fumbling with his wallet, the officer seized the opportunity. In one swift motion, he stood, drew his firearm, and ordered the suspect to drop his weapon. The command was loud and clear, echoing through the cafe, a voice of authority that carried both warning and finality. But instead of surrendering, the robber panicked. He spun toward the officer, weapon still in hand, and fired a shot. The cafe erupted in chaos. Customers screamed and dove for cover beneath tables and behind chairs. In the next instant, the officer returned fire. 4 quick, precise shots that filled the air with deafening echoes. Even in the haze of adrenaline, the officer's training took over. He didn't lose focus or fire wildly. His every move was deliberate. As the gunman staggered backward, wounded but still conscious, the officer scanned the room, ensuring there were no accomplices hiding nearby. His wife crouched low, clutching the table leg, praying her husband would make it out alive. A few tense seconds passed that felt like an eternity. Then, shockingly, The wounded assailant lifted his weapon again and fired one last desperate shot. The bullet missed, striking a nearby wall, and the officer fired back immediately, bringing the confrontation to an end. The robber's weapon clattered to the floor as he collapsed, finally realizing the fight was over. The cafe was now filled with the acrid scent of gunpowder and the sound of heavy breathing. No one dared move at first. Then, slowly, one customer, perhaps acting on impulse, stood up and walked toward the fallen weapon. Without thinking, he picked it up, intending to hand it to the officer, but in doing so, he unknowingly pointed the gun toward his own wife, causing her to flinch in fear. The incident, later shared online, sparked heated debate across social media, with many criticizing the man's reckless decision and how easily it could have turned tragic. Despite the confusion, the officer quickly took control of the scene, securing the suspect and ensuring everyone was safe. He checked the injured robber, confirmed no one else was hurt, and called for backup. Within minutes, the cafe was swarming with responding officers and paramedics. The footage of the event spread rapidly across the internet, drawing praise for the officer's composure and bravery under pressure. Viewers from around the world commended how he managed to neutralize a dangerous threat without harming any innocent bystanders. It became yet another example of how crucial quick thinking and calm action are in life-or-death situations. The suspect, later identified as a young man involved in previous petty crimes, was rushed to the hospital with a gunshot wound to his arm. Police reported that he was in stable condition and would face multiple charges, including attempted robbery and assault. It began as a reckless chase down Valencia Boulevard, where danger unfolded in real time. The stolen Cadillac Escalade sped dangerously close to oncoming traffic, nearly colliding head-on with several cars. The suspect's driving was frantic, erratic, and increasingly aggressive with each second that passed. For a brief moment, relief came when he finally began driving in the right direction, but it was short-lived. There were no signs of him slowing down, no regard for the lives around him, and every turn brought a new risk. The commentators watching from above described the chaos unfolding below. At one point, a suspect had jumped out of the moving vehicle, only to get back in moments later. It seemed as though the group was disorganized, desperate, and completely out of control. Law enforcement knew that the way this chase was going, it could only end one of two ways. Either someone would get seriously hurt, or it would come to a dramatic stop. The suspect appeared to be dropping off his friends, but when one of them noticed police vehicles closing in, he panicked and jumped back inside. The chase had become too intense to abandon now. The driver floored the gas pedal, weaving through streets and parking lots, trying to outsmart the black and white patrol cars flooding the area. The pursuit led them through a crowded parking lot and back onto Valencia Boulevard, as the Cadillac maneuvered dangerously between traffic. The suspect was now heading west, away from Magic Mountain, speeding deeper into the Santa Clarita area. The roads were wide open, and that only made things worse. Without traffic to slow him down, the suspect could hit dangerously high speeds. The commentators noted that if he lost control, the consequences would be catastrophic. As the Escalade tore through intersections, blowing past red lights, there was a moment where it jumped a concrete median without hesitation, nearly striking another car. It was a miracle no one had been hit yet. The driver then made a sharp turn into what appeared to be an apartment complex, possibly trying to lose the officers. But instead of stopping, he began circling the complex, performing loops as if taunting the police cars behind him. The officers knew this had to end now. Eventually, the suspect's luck ran out. The complex led to a dead end, trapping the vehicle with nowhere else to go. Within seconds, law enforcement units swarmed in, including the California Highway Patrol and LAPD, whose helicopter hovered above to provide aerial coordination. As the Escalade came face to face with a patrol car, the suspects made their move. Both the driver and a passenger jumped out, sprinting through the apartment grounds, desperately searching for an escape route. It was chaos. The pair darted between parked cars and fenced areas, jumping over walls and cutting through private backyards. Residents who had no idea what was happening suddenly found suspects running through their properties. The officers on the ground were momentarily outnumbered, waiting for backup to arrive. The air unit radioed their positions as the two suspects zigzagged through the neighborhood, trying to lose pursuit. From above, the chase looked like a scene from an action film. The suspects ducked into corners, crouched behind bushes, and looked for any dark space to hide. They were clearly panicking. The news anchors warned residents watching live coverage to lock their doors immediately. Two possibly armed men were on the loose, hiding among the homes of Santa Clarita. The suspects eventually reached a residential area near Soledad Canyon Road, where they found a bike path that ran along a small wash. Nearby, families were enjoying their Wednesday afternoon at a community pool, completely unaware that two fugitives were running toward them. The sight was surreal. Children were swimming while two men in dark clothing sprinted along the pool deck, looking for cover. Then, the chase came to its tense conclusion. Law enforcement officers from both the LAPD and the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department approached with their weapons drawn, closing in on the suspects. Realizing they were surrounded and out of options, both men dropped to the ground, surrendering without a fight. The sight brought visible relief to the officers, the news anchors, and the watching public. No shots were fired. No innocent lives were lost. The people at the pool, including a little girl who had been taking swimming lessons, were safely escorted away. It was a miracle that the situation ended without tragedy, especially considering how dangerously it had begun. As the suspects were taken into custody, law enforcement secured the area, ensuring there were no remaining threats. Commentators identified the location as the Villa Metro apartment complex, a sprawling residential area not far from the main roads of Santa Clarita. The aerial footage showed the Cadillac Escalade abandoned near the entrance, its tires worn and the doors left open. One of the three suspects had earlier jumped from the moving vehicle, leaving two to continue the chase on foot. Throughout the entire pursuit, the suspects had driven like men with nothing to lose, barreling into oncoming traffic, jumping sidewalks, and nearly striking pedestrians. Witnesses later described the terrifying sight of the speeding Escalade weaving between vehicles, as police sirens echoed behind it. Now, with two suspects in custody and one still unaccounted for, authorities continued their search. The vehicle, believed to be stolen, was impounded for evidence. Officers commended the teamwork between the LAPD, the California Highway Patrol, and the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department for preventing what could have easily turned into a tragedy. In the end, it was a story of reckless choices, fast driving, and the quick coordination of law enforcement that kept the city safe. What began as a wild chase down Valencia Boulevard ended with two suspects lying face down near a community pool, surrounded by officers and flashing lights. As residents looked on in disbelief, it was a relief that no one had been injured that day, a rare and fortunate outcome in what could have been a deadly pursuit. It was a calm afternoon at an In-N-Out Burger in Manteca, California, when a shift manager named Nick picked up the phone and dialed emergency services. His voice was steady but urgent. Something strange was happening in the drive-through lane. A man in a white van was acting violently, slamming his vehicle repeatedly into the car in front of him. It wasn't an accident. Each hit was intentional, each rev of the engine deliberate. The customers and employees could only watch in disbelief.
Yeah, he's in a white van. I'll see if I can get the license plate number for you. I don't see a license plate on the front. Looking in the back, the gentleman's wearing a 49ers jersey. License plate number.
Nick, maintaining his composure, explained the situation to the dispatcher. The man behind the wheel appeared agitated, erratic, and uncooperative. He was sitting between both drive-through windows, blocking the lane and preventing anyone else from moving. The car he hit had been forced forward, and the frightened customers inside were now trying to get away from the chaos. When asked to describe the suspect, Nick gave every detail he could see. The man was white, large, with tattoos on his arms and long hair at the back. He wore a bright red San Francisco 49ers jersey, number 85, Vernon Davis. Inside the van, Nick noticed clutter everywhere. Seat covers with American flag logos, a fishing pole, and what looked like a box of beer. The restaurant had decided not to serve him. "He's being hostile," Nick told the dispatcher. "We're refusing to serve him, and he's refusing to leave." Moments later, the situation escalated. The man began moving his van erratically, striking the drive-through sign and dragging it behind him as he tried to flee the scene. Nick, still on the phone, gave constant updates. "He's leaving the drive lane now," he said. "He just hit the sign. He's dragging it." But before long, it became clear that he hadn't gone far. The man circled back around the restaurant, his white Chrysler Town and Country van scraping the pavement. Witnesses reported he appeared intoxicated or disturbed, swerving dangerously near other cars. Within minutes, law enforcement officers arrived at the scene. One patrol car pulled in near the drive-through exit, trying to intercept the van. The suspect accelerated directly into the officer's vehicle. A sickening crunch echoed across the lot as the van collided with the cruiser. The officer shouted over the radio, and the words that followed pierced through the radio chatter. Shots fired. Shots fired. The gunfire erupted suddenly. Glass shattered, tires screeched, and the sound of echoing bullets sent customers diving for cover. People ran from their cars, dropping drinks and bags of food as they scrambled to safety. The officer's commands cut through the chaos. "Turn off your car. Get out of the vehicle, sir. I don't want to hurt you." The van's engine roared once more.
I don't want to hurt you! I don't want to hurt you! I don't want to hurt you, okay? Look, I want this to end peacefully!
But soon went silent, the air filled with smoke and the sharp scent of burnt rubber. The suspect, now wounded, refused to step out. Officers positioned themselves strategically, weapons drawn, using nearby cars as cover. Their goal was no longer arrest. It was survival and de-escalation. From their position behind the patrol cars, the officers began negotiating. Their voices were calm, controlled, and deliberate. "Charles," one officer called out, "I don't want to hurt you. Let's end this peacefully." The man inside, Charles, sat still, a cigarette in his hand, smoke curling from the open window. He ignored repeated commands to exit the vehicle. Every minute felt like an hour as the standoff dragged on. The parking lot was locked down, nearby businesses warned to shelter in place. The officers were patient, determined to resolve the confrontation without further violence. "Charles, we can talk about this," one officer said, stepping forward slightly. "I want to provide you with medical aid. Just come out slowly. I don't want to hurt you." But Charles didn't move. He sat there smoking, staring blankly ahead. His right hand was out of view, hidden somewhere near the seat. Officers couldn't see if he was reaching for a weapon, which made every second more dangerous. Negotiators tried to build trust. They called him by name, spoke softly, and avoided any sudden moves. "We're not coming to you," one said. "We'd rather you come to us so nobody gets hurt." Another officer added, "We just want this to end the safest way possible, brother. Come on. What's your name?" When Charles finally responded, his voice was quiet, distant. "Charles," he said. "Okay, Charles," the officer replied gently. "We want to get you out of that car safely. Nobody needs to get hurt today." The officers pleaded with him for several minutes. "Can you show us your right hand?" one asked. "Just raise it slowly so we can make sure it's empty." There was a pause. Then, slowly, a single hand appeared through the window. The officers sighed in relief, but kept their weapons ready. "Good job, Charles," one called out. "Just keep your hand right there. That's perfect. We'll get you that burger afterward, okay?" A faint, tired laugh came from inside the van. It seemed to calm the tension for a moment, but then Charles went silent again. The officers continued speaking to him, offering reassurances. "You can smoke as many cigarettes as you want, man," one officer said. "But it's better if we get you out of the car." Another added, "We're not sending anyone to you, Charles. It's not safe. Just come to us." Charles mumbled something, but it was unclear what he said. The officers exchanged glances. They knew the longer it dragged on, the riskier it became. The situation had already turned violent once. It could happen again at any moment. "Charles," one officer called out firmly, "we're in a parking lot full of other people who don't need to be a part of this. Let's do this the right way. For your sake and for everyone else's." The tension was unbearable. Minutes passed. Officers adjusted their positions, calling for shields and medical kits in case things went south. "We want a peaceful resolution, Charles," one last plea echoed. "Please, just talk to me. Let's come to an understanding." Then, something shifted. Officers noticed Charles moving inside the van. One whispered, "What's he reaching for?" Another responded, "Can't see. Stay sharp." The man seemed to fumble between the seats, his right hand vanishing from view again. "Charles," the negotiator shouted, "don't do that. Keep your hands where we can see them." But Charles didn't respond. Suddenly, the van engine roared to life again. Tires squealed as the vehicle jerked forward. "He's mobile," someone yelled. "Pin him in. Don't let him move." Patrol cars lunged toward the van, blocking its escape. "Crossfire! Crossfire!" an officer shouted as chaos erupted once again. The sound of gunfire filled the air. Officers fired in controlled bursts, aiming to stop the threat before the van could ram into anyone else. When the last shot rang out, the world seemed to fall silent. The smoke hung low, and all that could be heard was the hum of engines and the distant sirens of arriving backup. "Get gloves," an officer said. "We need a med kit now." Another ran forward carrying a ballistic shield, while a third opened the van door cautiously. The tense silence that followed said it all. The suspect, Charles, lay motionless inside. As medics rushed to provide aid, officers cleared the scene, checking every corner of the lot. One radioed in, "It's clear, completely clear." What began as a call from a fast food restaurant about a hostile customer had spiraled into a dangerous confrontation that ended with gunfire and tragedy. It all unfolded on that afternoon in March 2024, a day that started like any other at an In-N-Out burger, but would end in chaos, fear, and heartbreak. The employees and customers who witnessed it would never forget the sight of the white van, the blaring sirens, and the officers shouting commands through the haze of smoke. For the officers, it was another painful reminder of how quickly a simple call can turn into a fight for life and death. In the end, their goal had been clear from the beginning: to bring everyone home safely. But sometimes, despite patience, negotiation, and restraint, the story doesn't end the way anyone hopes. As the smoke settled and the sirens faded, one thing became painfully clear: all it takes is a few seconds for peace to turn into chaos. That day, inside that quiet In-N-Out, everyone walked away with a story they'd never forget, a story that reminds us how fragile life truly is. And that brings us to the end of this episode. If you found this video informative, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss what we drop next. We cover stories like this almost every day, and trust me, you don't want to be left behind. If you can't wait until the next upload, there are more videos popping up on your screen in just a few seconds. Click one and keep watching. Until then, take care. I'm out.